Sweet. Alright. I'm going to do some reading here. Alright. Wait just a couple of seconds. Hi. I'm just going to go ahead and read what Wikipedia has to say about skalds. Why not? Let's do it. Skald, or Skald, Old Norse, Icelandic skald, meaning poet, is generally a term used for poets who composed at the courts of Scandinavian leaders during the Viking Age, between, it says, 1793 and 1066. As we know, Charlemagne started his campaign around 1066. Isn't it interesting that immediately the skalds were targeted? Let's see, and continuing, and it continues. So it continued, of course, and continuing into the Middle Ages, 5th century to 15th century. Skaldic poetry forms one of two main groupings of Old Norse poetry, the other being anonymous Eddic or Edic poetry. I'm not a big expert, I'm just reading on this. So you're expecting some big intellectual prowess. I don't have it. I'm not going to act like I do. So the most prevalent meter of skaldic poetry is, let's see, Drok Kavet. I don't know. Kavet. That's DROTTKV, and then the AE letter together. I don't know what that's called, and two T's. Subject is usually historical and let's see, encomiastic, detailing the deeds of the skald's patron. So if they wanted to, say, suppress certain king lines, those skalds would have been targeted. They've got a picture of one. He's basically, see, Bersi Skald Torfusen. See, and that was a part of his last name. In chains, composing poetry after he was captured by King Olafur. Olaf Haraldsson. Christian Krog's illustration of Hemskringla, 1899 edition. Wow. Think about how hardcore that was. In chains. Wow. Subject is usually historical, and again, encomiastic, detailing the deeds of the skald's patron. There is no evidence that the skalds employed musical instruments, but some speculate that they may have accompanied their verses with a harp or lyre. Let's see. The corpus of skaldic poetry comprised 5,797 verses by 447 skalds, preserved in 718 manuscripts. It is currently being edited by Skaldic Poetry of the Middle Ages Project. Etymology. The word skald is perhaps ultimately related to Proto-Germanic skaliz, sound, voice, shout. Let's see. Old High German skol, sound. Old High German has skolosang, song of praise, or psalm. So that's where they pulled that from. And skalon, ring, clang, resound. The Old High German variant stem skeleton, etymologically identical to the skald stem Proto-Germanic skelden, Skeldan, means to scold, blame, accuse, insult. So if, say, one king didn't like another king, he would hire one of these guys, or maybe they liked one king and didn't like another, So they would actually insult them in verse. You can see why they would be targeted for that. Person doing the insulting is a skelto or skeltari. The West Germanic counterpart of Skald is the scope, SKO, or scop, SCOP, like the scop, which is related to modern English scoff. Interesting. The name Skald is continued in English scold, reflecting the central position of mocking taunts in Germanic poetry. So this has a long history. Okay. Moving down. History. Skaldic poetry can be traced to the earlier 9th century with Bragi. Now remember, Bragi was a god of poetry, so that makes sense that they would have named him after that, or maybe he named himself. Who knows? Bragi Bodinson, or he was named that because he was a skald. Like I said, I'm not an expert. And his Ragnar Droppa, considered among the oldest surviving Norse poems. Brage is the earliest skald whose verse has survived. Interesting. However, many skalds came after him, like Egil Skallagrimsson and, let's see, Torbjorn Hornlove, let's say, who gained much fame in the 10th century for the poems composed with the kings they served of their own exploits at the time. The Icelanders and the Nordic people were still pagan, and their work reflected that by many references to gods like Thor and Odin and to seers and runes. The poetry from then also can be noted for its portrayal of a heroic age for the Vikings and praise poetry designed to commemorate kings and other prominent people, often in the form of quite long poems. As time went on, skalds became the main source of Icelandic and Norse history and culture, as it was the skalds who learned and shared the largely oral history. So, as if you can look at the bards or the Philly in Druidic culture, you could gain quite the position. I'm not going to read everything. I think that pretty much sums up what I wanted to say. And if you look at the history of, let's say, the Philly or the bards, you would notice that they were the carriers of history in itself. And so if somebody, say, was a very old skald or filly or bard, they would have had an extensive knowledge of the personal history of the tribe. And that is why they would have been targeted, because that is a way of, say, erasing the history of the tribe. You go, wow, yeah, it is wow. But there was both a positive and a negative aspect. One was praising and one was basically scolding. So the art of the insult is very old. Let's see where we're at. I had it turned way down before. I'm only on 25. Great heroes and great poets from the old days. Can you hear them now, even from the grave, and they're not dead? Which way home they said, say have much to offer, but I got a little song to sing. Skald, 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 broggy, broggy, come. Poetry in the head, I'm calling you back from the dead. Whoa, sure as a stallion rides, I can hear you. Oh, skald, skald, skald. Can feel it in my veins. Doesn't seem like there's much left to say. Kings of old got us on the way. Ran through the river, I think I saw a hero on the mountainside. She was saying, she called out to me, will you come my way? I will, but I don't have much more to offer than a song for you. Your beauty is so great, like a golden lock I see falling down from the sky. Eyes were the color of blue, so beautiful, like an ocean. I could see the reflection on the tides as it rolled in, rolled out. Which way home can you see me now? Oh, haven't got much more left to do. Hope you can hear me through and through. Skald, skald, so we ride on. Well, I don't have much bad to say. I'm just calling on back to the heroes of old. If I could break that chain off his neck, I would. Broggy on the way, Broggy on the way, Broggy on the way. Broggy, 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 said freedom on the way. Oh, feel you on the breeze, oh. See you on the ocean tide, hear you on the wave, hear you on the wave. I really feel like definitely whatever the remnant is of why I play music has got to be connected to that, to the whole Skald tradition, because what other explanation do I have for my level of passion? Yes, but I don't have the big technical background. But this is a simple instrument, you know. 4 strings max.